I guess. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome everybody to today's seminars. The first seminar is going to be given by Thomas Miller, one of our graduate students, doctoral student. He's going to tell us about his summer travels in Europe. Thomas has a BS and MS degrees from this department, and one of these days he'll have a PhD. Okay, go ahead, Thomas. You're on.
Okay. Well, I'm going to talk to you today about my summer. I spent from the end of May to the beginning of August in the summer traveling, and that's a lot of time that I couldn't cover today. So what I've done is I've gone through and tried to pick out a few places that maybe aren't as popular, that for the majority of people don't always get there very much. So, we'll see how successful I was with that. This is Europe. So just to give you an idea of where
That's a map of Europe.
that's it. I started in Greece here and went to some of the islands in the Aegean Sea here, and then went back to the mainland of Greece in a few places, and then went over to Italy and spent 3 weeks. Spent 3 weeks in Greece and then 3 weeks in Italy, and worked my way up to Switzerland and was there for 2 weeks, and then I went through Austria into to Hungary, and that took about that was about a 2-week trip, and then up to the Czech Republic, and was there in the Czech Republic for a week, and then the last 3 weeks of my trip, I was working my way across Germany to Paris. So that's the gist of where I went.
Well, did you travel by train or
By
car?
train.
By train.
Actually, anywhere other than Greece, it's great train system. You can get anywhere, no problem. Greece was a little bit more like it.
Did you keep up with your passport?
Yeah, I was able to hang on to it this time. In Greece, most of the time we used buses, which is kind of hit and miss. The quality of the bus there it's pretty hot. So we'll start in Greece. Came into Athens, and then we went to this. We spent most of our time on Crete, and there's a small island here that you can't really see too well. That's Santorini. We went there for a while. It's still an active volcano, but it used to be an entire island, circular island, but a long time ago it exploded and just left this crescent moon shape there. We went to, the first place that I'm going to tell you about was on Crete. We went to kind of down here, it's not on the map, a city right about there called Matala. And this is the beach where we hung out for a little while. There's some caves up here that you might not be able to see too well. This was I guess in the during the 60s and maybe early 70s, was a popular place for hippies to hang out, take it easy on the beach. If you go back kind of behind this, you see this cliff here, there's another cliff right behind me when I'm taking this picture. If you go up on top of that cliff, there's another beach, or sort of a red sand beach on the other side there. I was told that it's a reddish color because the sand has a lot of iron in it and rust. I don't know how much strength that has. But went over here to this beach in Matala, and that's another view of it there. Matala, what's funny about it is in Greece is sort of like the Florida of Europe. At least that's the feeling I got. And a lot of Germans come to Matala. It's sort of, they like to vacation there. And I didn't think about it at first when we got there. My wife and I, we stayed in a hotel that had a German gym. Didn't think anything at first, but I guess the second or third day I was there, I went to buy a newspaper. It's the only city in Europe that I went to that didn't have an English newspaper available in any of the newsstands. They were all Greek or German. I thought that was a little odd. On that map of Greece, I was kind of in the center, on the south part. I went over to the extreme west. Of Crete. And we hiked. This is a picture from the top of this hike that we did. It's called the Samari Gorge. It's the largest gorge in Europe, I believe. And we started from the top to the bottom. Was about, I think it was about 14 or 15 kilometers, and it's maybe about a little over half day hike down to the bottom. This is a picture of it from the top. This is down at the bottom. We're almost at the end. My wife here can't see too well, but it starts out really big, and then you get down to the bottom here, and it's very narrow, and there's places where it's maybe 2 meters wide walking through this little guts where it is. It's really picturesque. But that's it's kind of close to on Crete. Another major city, the largest city on Crete is Heraklion, and the next largest city is Hania, which is on the western part of the island. And if you go to Hania, you can easily get buses to take you to the top of that hike. We returned to the mainland, and we toured around the mainland some. This is we went to 2 sites that I want to tell you about: Delphi and Olympians. And this is a temple at Delphi. At Delphi, most of the time you hear about the oracle that was there. People would go and they technically had to pay the oracle. We made some offering of gold or something, and then you got to ask your question. The oracle gave you an answer that could be interpreted 2 ways. So that way they're always right. Just in case it didn't turn out one way. Oh, look, it could have meant this too. But there's something about these Greek sites that I didn't realize. Whenever you had a temple built for a male goddess, you had a female goddess's temple right next to it. I didn't realize that, but that's always the case. And because in Delphi, where the oracle was, that temple was for well, this is for Athena here. There's a round temple. That's kind of unique. They're usually sort of rectangular shape. And this here is above the temple of the god. I can't remember who the guy was. I keep wanting to say Apollo, but that's not right. And the oracle would sit here on this rock there, and you'd come in. You actually couldn't go into the room where the oracle was. You'd sort of stand out here in the main part of the temple and sort of yell your question to the oracle, and then yell the answer back to you.
Is the oracle's name Cassandra?
That may have been one. There was more than one. There were always a priestess that was.
The one priestess, I guess, was Cassandra.
Yeah, maybe so. But there were several over. Supposedly, one rumor that people would tell you there was that there was some sort of crack here in the ground, and that fumes would come up. You would smell these fumes and some kind of gas. And get a little high, and that would help them make their predictions. I don't know. Now this is at Olympia. That picture doesn't turn out well, but this was really, really neat. This is the original Olympic Stadium from the ancient Olympic Games. The modern Olympic Games, the first stadium is actually in downtown Athens, but this is the ancient Olympic Stadium. You can't see to it. I don't know how y'all can see. It was just a flat field. There's no seats or anything around it except for right here is where the judges would sit. And then there's a small altar right there where the athletes can make sacrifices before they compete.
What is Ivan?
It was longer than a football field. It's maybe about as wide as a football field, but it's not. It's not as long as two football fields. Yeah.
When they competed here, that's when they competed nude.
Yeah, I was going to say they competed nude here, and only men were allowed in the stadium. There was one. Actually, one lady they know of snuck in. I think her father had been an Olympic champion, and her husband was an Olympic champion, and her son was competing at the time, and he actually won, became an Olympic champion. She snuck in to see her son and was caught, and they got really mad. But then once they realized who she was, they're kind of like, "You're all right, because you got all these men in your family have been Olympic champions." So I think it was great. Outside of the, kind of back behind where I was taking that picture, is this is where their torch would burn during the ancient Olympics, and the torch for the modern Olympics now always, they have this run and they take the torches, but it always starts here. So in Utah, next year, the torch will start here at some point, maybe in November, December, pretty soon. It'll make its way around the world, so in Utah, somewhere. All right, I took a ferry from Greece to Italy, which I wouldn't recommend. I'd fly. It saves you a lot of time. It's not that expensive if you book it ahead of time. But we took a ferry from the western coast of Greece to right about here. It's a small town named Bari, B-A-R-I. And then in Italy, we went to here, the Naples area, Naples, Pompeii, Sorrento, and then we went to Rome. We went to Assisi, and we came from Assisi, we went back to Rome, and to right up here between Florence and this here, the Cinque Terre is Pisa. We went to Pisa and the Cinque Terre. I want to show you some things there. And also along the line, in Italy, we went to Genoa and Florence. Milan is here. But let me show you some places. Obviously, this is Pisa, which is a pretty famous place. A lot of people go there. But this is the Leaning Tower, which everyone knows about, and that's what I was going to see. But I didn't realize until I got there, I don't know if you can see it, everything in this area, you can see this is the baptistry, and this is the church, and the Leaning Tower is here. And the Leaning Tower is just a bell tower in this church, essentially. And I didn't know it, but everything in this field here is leaning or has structural problems, just like the Leaning Tower. I don't know if you can see this building is kind of tilted this way. When this area at one point in time was a harbor for the ocean, and it was a harbor, and it was drained, not intentionally drained, but the ocean just receded, and they built lots of things in this area. There's some other buildings behind here, and the ground was just so soft, it kind of silt. Everything has foundation problems. It does that.
How stupid was it actually built that way, like or did it just like flooding or the tectonic movement?
That's what I'm saying. The ground is really soft. So they built all this stuff, and it was straight. Everything was straight to start with, and it started to shift. Now the bell tower, before they were even halfway done with it, it already started tilting.
No, I mean, I'm just curious because both it seems to be tilting at the same angle. One, but maybe it's just in a picture or something.
Maybe it's like that. No, it's not. Nothing is intentional. Here's another. I don't know if you can see that or not. Here in this building, in the side of the church, you can see that sort of the ground is flat here, and then there's segments of stone, and you can see how the stone is. Can y'all see that? It's dark. No, too dark. Sorry. We left Pisa and went to the Cinque Terre, which is Cinque is 5 in Italian. It's 5 cities in a row. It's called the Italian Riviera. It's kind of a continuation of the French Riviera into Italy. And this is one city we went to. This is either Vernazza or Marino. I get the two confused, but they're both in Italy. It's one or the other. But this area, the 5 cities, they're connected by train. You can take a train from each one, but they're only maybe definitely less, all of them are less than 5 miles apart. Some of them are maybe only a mile apart. And they're right on the ocean like this. And over here, you can't probably see it too well, but there's a sort of a sidewalk, a pathway that you can hike between these two. So we would spend the night in one town and get our stuff. Go to the next city and hike to it, stay there, eat a bunch of seafood, go to the next one. It's a really picturesque place with all the different colored buildings. There are roads in here, but none of them are large enough to get cars on. They're not connected to any other town, so they're pretty nice. This is another picture from that same city, from our bungalow, I guess you could say. These towns they're popular for tourists. There's lots of tourists there. They don't have the infrastructure for tourists. There's pretty much no hotels. So we ended up renting this lady's apartment from her for about $50 a night, I guess. And I think she ended up going and staying with her mom or something one night. We just stayed at her place, and she was like, "Yeah, I met you. All these people would meet you as you get off the train. Like, I have a room. Okay, I'll rent your room." And I felt like later on I realized I felt like I was kicking her out of her room to stay there. But she's making some pretty good money, I guess. Probably can't see this too well. This is in Florence. It's a little memorial that the Italians have erected for Enrico Fermi. A picture of that. This is it's in Florence. There's a church there. The Sacred Heart. I keep wanting to say Sacred Cœur, but that's French. That's in Paris. But it's not the main Duomo in Florence. And there's several famous people either buried there or there's a monument. Michelangelo and Galileo are buried there. And then there's a memorial for Enrico Fermi and a memorial for Dante Alighieri and a memorial for Machiavelli. Some other famous Italians. We left Italy. We went to Switzerland, which is absolutely phenomenal. It's my favorite place I've ever been. In particular, this city here that we went to, Interlaken. The mountains, the Swiss Alps, were amazing. The only problem with Switzerland is it is expensive to just survive there. And can really run through some money pretty fast.
What time of the year were you there in Switzerland?
Actually, we were there for the first week of July. We were there for the 4th of July.
It's a little bit too late. If you go a little bit earlier, it's a lot cheaper.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. Probably you want to get there somewhere between the peak skiing season.
End of May, beginning of June. That's when you want to go there.
Yeah. But this picture is actually from Interlaken, and this is the largest mountain in the area, the Jungfrau. And they have this amazing system of trains and cog-rails that take you to all these different peaks and things. You go up these mountains, and it's pretty expensive to ride on these things. But we bought, I think we bought like a 5-day pass. After you rode maybe for 2 days, you broke even if you actually paid for each trip and foot. And then after, so I just thought of it as the next 3 days with traveling for free with this train system. This mountain here, this is, that's me. As you can see, that's me on the top of the Jungfrau. There's a nice big glacier back behind it. This is another mountain sort of across from the Jungfrau called Schilthorn. And you may recognize this building. There's a Bond movie that was filmed here. They blew the building up in the Bond movie, but they rebuilt it, and now this has a restaurant inside of here, and it revolves around. And we got it at like 5 o'clock in the morning to take the first train up this mountain. You get can eat breakfast there, and then it revolves around, and you can see the panorama. It's really pretty. Then we got the crazy idea that over here from this railway railing here, you can look down into this valley. There's a trail there. We'll hike down to the bottom. Shouldn't take too long. Well, there's signs there all over Interlaken for the distances and times that you take to walk in places. Those are for Swiss people. So, don't believe him. We're walking down this mountain, and it's pretty steep. And I'm just trying, my wife and I are just trying not to fall down the mountain. And there's people passing us going down. And then about halfway down, I started to feel really bad. There was this older guy coming up, maybe in his 60s or 70s, and he's just flying up his mouth. And it's like, man, what a idiot. But you can see there's a point right here. We walked down from the Shilthorn, and then we walked on this ridge all the way around to this point there, and just to get a better view closer to these mountains here and over. This is sort of one valley, and there's another valley down there. And this is going out to the peak. You can see it's pretty narrow. That's my wife. Pretty narrow path there. You don't want to slip. You won't make it. And this is out on the peak. We get there, and there's this little wooden box. And we open it up, and inside the wooden box is another, like, Tupperware kind of box. And it's got this book in it for people that go out to that peak to sign their name in the book. And we've been there for a week, and while we've been there, there was maybe 2 or 3 people who gone up there. So we signed their name. That's it, just for me. And then you can kind of see that more of the valley over here. Then we went down there. So we spent the whole day just trying to get down. Now I'm going to kind of start to skip some things. We went into Austria, but places we went I felt like were really popular. A lot of people have been to. We went to Salzburg and to Vienna. We stopped in Milk for an afternoon. It was a really amazing abbey there. The most ornate thing outside of that Catholic abbey church. Anytime I think of that I've ever seen.
You go to the library there?
Yes. We took like a guided tour there. It was unbelievable. Then going on through Austria, we went to Budapest in Hungary. Which Budapest, after you go to Switzerland, is a really good place to go because it's cheap. There's lots of stuff to do in Budapest. There's a cathedral there. St. Stephen is their sort of patron saint. And you can go to the St. Stephen's Cathedral, and they have supposedly it's his hand that's preserved in this. It kind of looks like a coffin book or something. It's just his hand there. And in the back, you can go and look at this jar. It's a little more fancy than a jar, but supposedly it's a ring here preserved. I don't know. There's a lot of those kind of artifacts. But outside of Budapest, we went to this place called Statue Park. And it is really, really fun. It's like, I guess after 89 or 90, once the Soviet Union had fallen and communism had kind of gotten the boot in Hungary, they went around Budapest and collected all of their communist statues and plaques and other propaganda. They took them out to this park way outside of Budapest, and they put them all out there on display, so you can still see them, but then they charge you admission. I think it's just great that capitalism's we were there at sunset, so it's kind of, a lot of these pictures didn't turn out well, depending on how the statue was facing. This is one of the better ones. The next, you might recognize this guy.
Must be Lenin.
That's it. That's Lenin. It turned out a little better. There's a couple pictures of him. We went to a museum there, and I think in 1956 they had a revolt in Budapest. And I think this was the statue, but it's been repaired since then. They pulled this statue of Lenin down in that revolt, broken the hand off of it off. And the hand that had broken off was in this museum. I think this is the same statue that's been repaired. Okay, we left Budapest and we went to Prague, which I don't have any pictures of Prague. The whole, I didn't bring any pictures of Prague. There's like not one thing in Prague that I would photograph and say, this is just amazing. It's just the whole city itself is amazing. It wasn't destroyed in World War I or World War II. And when I first got there, it's just like, oh, what's the big deal? And the more I walked around and see all, like, every form of architecture is there. It's really impressive. We went across Germany. We stopped in Nuremberg. We went up to the Rhine. We took a cruise on the Rhine River, which is
Lower left.
and
Further down.
yeah, further down. Right here. It's labeled Valley. We took a cruise on the Rhine, and that was it. It was a little long. I guess we took this cruise. You can jump on and hop off at tons of different little places, and we had a Euro pass. That's what we've been traveling on. Our Euro pass covered like the whole trip. So we'll go to the top up here and we'll go all the way down. That took like 10 hours, and after 10 hours, this cruise was a little long, but it was worth it. It's really great. I've got to end in Paris, where we flew home from. One place in Paris that some of you may have been, maybe not, is the Pantheon, and it has some famous Frenchmen buried there. This here, the little board, the last two here. This, you can't read it. Dr. Robles, this is from him. This was Carnot, the Carnot cycle thing. He was an engineer for Napoleon, and then some other famous Frenchmen, Madame and Pierre here, Marie and Pierre was also buried there. There's some other famous Frenchmen there, Voltaire and Rousseau, and some others. But so that's kind of some things that I did this summer that maybe aren't as widely fun. So
We've got time for a couple of questions if there's any questions. I have one question.
Take these pictures with the digital camera?
no, that's probably why they hadn't turned out as well. I scanned all those the other day. I scanned them with fairly high resolution, but I think they don't look as good in this one. Yeah.
What's the European tour called, man?
Let's see. Okay. My wife is over 27, so we had to buy a first-class Europe passes. So for 2 months, unlimited, you can go anywhere else. Our travel was a little over $2,000, which I kept up with, I guess, being an engineer, sort of do these kind of things. I kept up with where we went, how many trips we took, and it ended up being averaging out to about $25 per person per train ride. That's pretty cheap. Then we stayed in hotels that ranged anywhere from $50 to $100 a night. And basically my point is $2,000 for transportation and then $150 a day for 2 people to survive. Average of $150 a month. We could eat, go to any museum or anything we wanted to. And with $150 a day, you can stay in pretty nice hotels. If you want to stay in Newcastle or cheaper hotels without air conditioning, maybe you don't have your own private bathroom, you can do it probably for $75 a day. Anything else?
Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you, Thomas.
All right.
All right, the next presentation is going to be by Jenny Huff. And Jenny's a graduate of this department, BS and MS degrees, working on a PhD. She'll probably finish it up by next summer. She is, thank you. She was nominated to go to a particular meeting in Germany in Lindau, which she's going to tell you about. Every year there's a meeting of Nobel laureates, and they bring in students from all over the world to sit with these Nobel laureates and listen to them and talk to them and all this for about a week. And so Jenny was awarded one of these trips, and so she went to Lindau back in late June, and so she's going to tell us about her trip to Lindau in this meeting with the 51st meeting of the Nobel laureates. Jenny Huff.
Okay, well, as Dr. Townsend said, I attended this past June the 51st meeting of the Nobel laureates. And there's about 400 students internationally. There was, of course, this is in Germany. There was a large group from all over Germany. This year there was a large group from Britain and also from India. So, and this was, I think, the first year that there was a pretty large group from India. So they were all excited and had everything right up front. So, as Dr. Chapman said, I was nominated by Oak Ridge. There were, okay, well, now that I've gone too far. All right, well, you can't read it. But there were 31 students nominated from DOE, and then 8 nominated from ORAL, and then 3 nominated from NIST. And my dot is right here, so I was nominated from UT. And what it had to do is you had to be a PhD student working on a DOE-sponsored program. And since I have a DOE fellowship, that was included in the DOE-sponsored program. So as you can see, all over the U.S., quite a few national labs were represented, lots of schools. My roommate throughout the whole trip was from Florida State, so we had stuff to talk about. Hoping to miss out. This was our first group picture taken in D.C. We all met in Washington, D.C. on the Thursday before the trip started, and we had to have an orientation meeting at DOE headquarters, which was probably the most boring thing of the entire trip. They had, I don't even remember who was all there, but they had probably the most interesting part of the whole orientation meeting was they had someone from the German embassy come talk to us. And he was telling us some customs, and probably the one custom I remember is he said that you don't say, if you want one of something, you don't hold up your index finger, you hold up your thumb. So if you hold up your index finger, you'll get 2. And he said, I guess the year before, people have made the mistake of ordering 1 beer, getting 2. So they told us to make sure. Well, you have to pay for it still if you order 2. So this is our first picture, and here I am, so. And then this was on the Friday when we were supposed to leave, but because of weather problems throughout the whole central part of the U.S., our planes did not come into Washington, so we stayed in D.C. for 2 extra days. And this is when we were first going to leave the hotel, and then this is waiting around in National Airport, which the pictures are really fuzzy. But we sat around in the airport on that Friday for about 3 hours, trying to think if we were going to leave or not, and then deciding, no, we'll stay in D.C., and we didn't leave for 2 more days. So, but once we finally got there, these are some postcards I got. Lindau is right on the bottom. I should have, if you remember Thomas's map, you had Germany and then Switzerland, and there's Lake Constance, which is upside down, and Lindau's right, one of the islands, right in Lake Constance. Austria's backwards. I should have turned the postcard upside down, but Lindau's right here in Germany. And this is some overhead photos of Lindau. And there were 2 bridges coming into the island, a traffic bridge and then a train bridge. And there's a lecture hall, which is where our lectures were, all the info hall, which was right here on this part, and then those are the Alps, or the Swiss mountains. And our hotel was over here. And there was a harbor, which is better here, you can see. So it was pretty interesting being on such a small area of the country. These are just some pictures around the town, and the architecture was pretty amazing, and all the buildings being painted. I thought that was something interesting that I hadn't ever seen. But there's one of the streets. There weren't cars in the streets, just people walking, and there were cobblestone streets. There's another view, and then here's a view of the harbor. Okay, so the meeting started on the Monday. And every year since 1951, they've had this meeting. And this year, it was concentrated on physics. And in the past, last year was the 50th anniversary, so they had chemistry, physics, and physiology, medicine. So last year was probably the year to go if you were going to choose, since everyone was represented. But with this meeting, in the morning, everyone gave a lecture of whatever they wanted to talk about, be it their research or something they were interested in. And then in the afternoon, they sat down and they just had chairs and tables set up, and then chairs set around there where each of the laureates was just sitting out and answering any questions that somebody might have. some people were asking questions about research. Some people were just asking, well, what do you do with the money when you won it? Which some of the responses were, they didn't end up having as much money as they thought they would have when it all was said and done. By the time they got everyone over there that they wanted at the ceremony, they had barely anything left over. So it's pretty interesting. But these are all the Nobel laureates who were represented, and I can go through what everyone got their prize in what most of them were physics, ranging from years. There was 55, I think, was the earliest. Will Lamb was in 1955 in physics, and then Alfarov was last year, 2000. And then there were 2 from chemistry and 3 from chemistry, excuse me, and 1 from medicine. So most were physics, and which would happen with yes. There were quite a few Americans. William Phillips, he works for NIC. Laughlin, I think he works out in California. I don't remember. But yeah, there were quite a few. So the first day, which this whole first part we missed because we were just getting we flew into Zurich and took a bus from Zurich to Lindau. So we missed the whole first part. But there was an opening by the Countess, Countess Sonia, and she is the patron of the entire meeting. She's the one that is involved in getting everyone invited, and actually I met her back in, I think it was April. She was in Oak Ridge being presented the keys to the city, and they invited me to come out and meet her, and she's a very interesting woman. She knows stuff about everything. She knew, I could talk to her about my research, and she understood what I was talking about. So that's pretty amazing that you wouldn't expect that. So after she opened the meeting, they introduced all the laureates who were there, and they had the first roundtable discussion, which was from basic physics research to applications. And then that evening, they had a opening social event, which was a dance, which they started with the typical, I don't know, they told us it was a typical dance where the Countess, and I guess it was her son, came out and on the stage, and he presented her a carnation, and they bowed and curtsied and then walked down, and then everyone followed, and we walked right around the room, and then they started a waltz. So yes, I waltzed, for those of you who don't think, I didn't know what I was doing, but I did waltz. So this is from the morning. I got this off our website. This was from the first roundtable discussion, and this is our unloading the bus, exhausted after being on. And then this is our group picture with the Countess, who's right here. And we're all dressed up for the dance. And then we presented the Countess when we met with her that evening at the dance, a gift, which we had given her I guess they were the stamps, the Nobel stamps were given out this past year, and they were framed, and there was something else we gave her, but I cannot recall. But after we presented her gifts, and this was Ian McGregor, he spoke German, but he was the one to present her the gift. But after that, she came up and picked me out of the group, remembered me from 3 months beforehand, came up to me, shook my hand, and all the other students were, how do you know the Countess? So that was pretty, everyone was jealous of me at that point, and of course I had to say, well, I met her too, that's what I get from going to GT and being down the street from Oak Ridge. So, but that made me feel good for a little bit. But at the dance, they also had a little reception, and each of the laureates were sat at a table, and this is Jack Steinberger. He was at one of the tables, and you could just go up and sit and talk with him. It was very informal, and I don't think there was anyone at this table, but it was one of the pictures. But they were just all at, and so of course, you had to get there early so that you could be at a table with a laureate. And of course, we were there late, so we didn't get that. But it's all right. We had dinners later. But the Tuesday was the start of the lectures. And as you can see, everything was over my head. There was quite a few lectures on heterostructures, which, if you were to ask me now, I do not know what a heterostructure is. And about the only one, I was very excited. I saw this last one by Dr. Steinberger about cosmic radiation background. I was very excited about it. I was like, something I can understand. I get in there, you start talking, and the first thing he says is, this is not my own research. this is just something I'm interested in. And he still wasn't really talking about it, he was just kind of going off, and it wasn't really what I expected. So one thing I was really excited, and then he doesn't talk about what I was expecting. But that first day, there were quite a few, and that afternoon, they had the discussions, and I sat and listened to Dr. Huff and Dr. Phillips, and they both had the biggest group of students around them. Dr. Phillips was talking about his research, and people were asking questions about his research, but Dr. Huff was talking about what advice does he give his own graduate students, what did he do when he was getting his, doing his research to get the Nobel Prize. So his was more about personal things, advice that he gives his own students. So that was pretty interesting. He was more interesting at that point. But that evening, DOE and Oak Ridge sponsored a dinner with 3 of the Nobel laureates at the Golden Lounge. Typical German food, and I don't eat that kind of food, so I was not too excited. I did like the dessert. The dessert was very good, so these are just from the lectures. Alfarab, and then these are both of Asaki giving their presentations. And this is from our dinner. This is Huff talking to some of the students at the dinner, and they were very friendly. Dr. Phillips was talking about where he lives in the U.S. and horses and all this other stuff. No scientific things at all at dinner. And then Josephson, and then here's Phillips, and there I am at the end of the table. So there is a picture of me and all there. You know, Dr. Dawson, you just want to know that. But they were very polite at the dinner. And then the second day, there were more presentations. And let's see. Dr. Phillips, actually, his was the best presentation that day because he knew who his audience was. He knew that he was talking to students, not talking to his own peers. So it was he knew what kind of language to use. So most people understood. I didn't understand, but most people understood. That's what I get for not being a real physicist. But that afternoon, they also had discussions, and I think that afternoon I went and saw Laughlin's discussion. And he had a really large group, but he didn't know how to really talk to that kind of a group because he was sitting in the center, and his group was huge. But if somebody over here asked a question, he would only answer that person, and then he wouldn't repeat the question, and nobody had mics or anything. So we didn't know, I didn't have a clue what was going on half the time because the person over there was asking questions. So it was kind of a hit and miss who you would listen to and get some good information from. But that afternoon we had lunch at one of the local restaurants with more of I think there were 5 laureates there. And then that evening was a flute and piano concert, which was very excellent. And so here's Phillips and Huff while they were giving their presentations. And then this is our lunch. And as you can see, I mean, they were all talking. The Congress also attended. And here I am. I sat with Huff that day. And he started out talking about his research and the superfluid helium-3, which none of us, we were all engineers at this table, so none of us knew what he was talking about. And he was talking, and then he looked at us, and we were all looking at him with blank faces, and I think he goes, "What are you all interested in? What's your research?" So we all told him, and he realized that none of us really understood, and he started talking about other things. So that was good because, of course, superfluid helium. Yeah, okay. But both Huff and Phillips stayed after the lunch and were just talking to us. And that's what Huff was talking about, that when you receive your prize, you're allowed to bring as many people as you want. And let's see, you have to pay for their lodging and their trip over there, and most of the people just pay for it out of their prize money. So, and the prize money, it might seem like a lot of money, but after you probably split it with 3 or 4 other people, it's pretty small. It didn't seem too much. Let's see. And on the last day, we was a second roundtable discussion on the role of physics in life sciences, and it was an okay discussion. It was mainly, it seemed like the person who was heading the discussion, he hadn't been there the whole week, so he wanted to get his lecture in. So instead of it being 5 minutes of discussion, he spoke for 35 minutes on his topic. So it was not really a roundtable discussion in a sense. And then that afternoon, they had more of the scientific discussion, which they were some more in. There I am again, and then there's the roundtable discussion. And there were quite a few that were there, and Phillips attended both of the roundtable discussions. And I'm guessing that's because he's the most popular among the students. And then the very last day, we took a trip to Minot, which was the other end of the lake. So I think it was about 2.5 to 3 hours boat trip. But Minot is the Countess's island. Her castle and her place of residence is on this island. And she welcomed us all to the island, and we took a trip, and there's a butterfly house on the island, and a palm house, and multiple rose gardens. And then she concluded it, and this is the island, this is her castle. Yeah, wonderful. And then there's a palm house next to it. And she closed it, I think the closing ceremonies were right here, like, it was beyond the palm house, right in front of the castle. And then these are just a couple pictures of the rose garden, and just for the butterfly house. But it was an exciting trip, and I had a wonderful time, and I'm glad I got to go, even though most of it was over my head. I had a wonderful time, and I wouldn't pass it up. I mean, can't know how many people can say they've been in a room with, 20 Nobel laureates? I mean, that was probably the best thing, so. Any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Do you have any advice that you would pass on?
What, that I learned?
That they said that.
Well, what I thought was amazing is a lot of them had gotten it right, it was their PhD work. I mean, that might mean something, that makes it good for us, since most of us are PhDs. So.
Let's see who's the one.
No, but what was good is I got paired up with a guy from the UK, and he didn't know how to waltz either. But he was really worried that he was going to get paired up with a German girl who knew how to waltz. And I was worried I was going to get paired up with a German male, so we were both actually pretty lucky. No. But they did try to teach us before we left, because we went like shooting at the school.
I'd like to congratulate you on your appearance. I mean, Thomas got guzzier and guzzier.
Well, we were told that we had to be, there were certain things we had to be dressed up for. So they told us beforehand how many things we had to look nice in. Now, by the end of the plane ride home, we were all pretty ready to, all supposed to be nice.
Well, that was her second trip to Europe last summer, but we let her come home and clean up in between trips. Any other questions? Okay, good. Well, let's thank. I believe there's refreshments downstairs. I understand it's not the same lousy cookies that we've had the last couple of weeks. Huh?
I mean, you didn't taste test.
No, I didn't eat any last week.
Oh, this was
I've been
first taste test.
Nope. So, we're finished. We can go downstairs.
I was in Minot last summer. No, figured out how it all works. Personal trip last summer there.